This is part 2 with Preston Dennett. Link to part 1 is in the description. Preston Dennett has been a UFO and paranormal researcher for over 35 years. He's written dozens of books and hundreds of articles about UFOs and other mysterious phenomena. His books include Schoolyard UFO Encounters, Undersea UFO Base, Not From Here, and Mysteries, Legends, and Unexplained Phenomena, UFOs and Aliens. Please see the description for relevant links, recommended books, and timestamps. If you could talk a little bit about your book, I might pronounce this wrong, the Coronado Island UFO incident. So I had never heard of that before I saw your book. And I mean, I'm somebody that has researched this quite a lot. I didn't just kind of pick it up yesterday, but yeah, I hadn't heard of it. So I thought that was cool that you've written a book about a case I hadn't heard of. So yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about it. And I'm sure some people listening would.
Yeah, this was a very interesting incident, which I researched. Along partnering with Yvonne Smith, who was a researcher who basically did regressive hypnosis on a number of the witnesses. Okay. I was speaking for her group, CIRO, when one of the witnesses to this incident approached me and said he was part of it and wanted to write a book. I said, well, you should. He's like, well, I tried and I can't. Would you help me? I said, sure, I'll help you, but why don't you just write it and I'll help you. But he convinced me to basically partner with him because he really wanted it out. There's a lot of experiencers who are compelled to get their story out. The Coronado Island UFO incident occurred in March of 1994, where there was actually a UFO convention on Coronado Island. This is located right south of San Diego along the border of Mexico and is the least likely place for an encounter you can imagine. Because this is an island that is basically a tourist trap. It's almost entirely urbanized. It is absolutely densely populated with a very strong police force. It's quasi-military. This is where the Navy SEALs do their training. It's half military, this island. So it's not a place you would think an encounter would happen, but it did. And I interviewed this gentleman who I co-wrote the book with, Mike Evans, who's a primary witness and is responsible for getting this story out. Because he was at the Village Inn Hotel at a UFO conference there. I was there too at that conference when this incident occurred.
Oh, cool.
So I was just a few houses away. Honestly, I was within a mile of where at the Village Inn, where Mike was staying with his wife, Gina. And they had 4 friends who were in 2 other rooms. So we have 6 people in 3 adjoining rooms who on that night, I believe it was March 14, 1994, the night before the conference, had a visitation. Mike woke up because he thought there was a plane coming in for a landing and it was shining its landing lights into his room. His room filled with light. And he has this weird memory of getting up and going to the bathroom and hitting his lip and falling asleep and waking up in the morning with a spot of blood on his pillow. And he's like, honey, I had a weird night. I think I hit my lip. And his wife's looking at him. She says, your lip is fine, but there's a puncture wound in your ear. And he's like, no, I don't want to hear it. And they went down to breakfast, and the people who live or who were in the hotel room next to them, they don't want their real names to be used. One of them did allow me, but she's now retracted it. So I'm not going to use her real name. But one of them, these were 2 ladies who had, were in the same room right next to Mike and Gina.
Right.
And they came down for breakfast, and Nancy, I'll call her, said, I had a really weird night. Something happened. I'm feeling fluish. I don't feel well. Whereas the other lady who I interviewed, she remembered everything. She remembered Grace coming in, taking her friend out. And she's like, I don't want to talk about it, because she was upset. And then the other room, Phil and his wife, that's a pseudonym, they came down and they're like, we're not going to the conference. And everyone's like, why? He's like, I don't feel like it. We're just going to go shopping. Because they had a weird night too. Yeah. And so Mike goes home and starts waking up with bruises all over his arms and marks, and realizes he's having contact and ends up going under hypnosis. I'm shortening this because it's a long story.
Yeah, it's a whole book.
Yeah, it's so I mean, this is a full-length book story.
Yeah.
And so he ends up going to Yvonne Smith, who puts him under regressive hypnosis. And he remembers waking up with his room filling with light. This is at the hotel, by the way, which is just a stone's throw from the Swiss ambassador's house where President Clinton was coming to visit the very next day. So there
Oh,
were
wow.
Secret Service all over the island. We all saw
Yeah.
this. So this is just levels of bizarreness that is hard to, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And he recalls this gray coming in with a little device and implanting his ear. The other witnesses remember being taken. Nancy remembers just kind of being taken, that's it. Whereas the other lady does remember the grays coming in. She went under hypnosis, didn't remember anything new because she remembered consciously. And Phil, the car mechanic in the third room, woke up, the room filled with light. In walked a gray who took his wife right up through the ceiling. And so more than that happened. There was another witness I talked to in a separate hotel who was also taken that night. So, I mean, this is a long, complicated case, but
Yeah.
very interesting because Mike did go to the doctor, did verify the puncture wound. He had a high blood pressure attack. It's got some really outstanding physical evidence because he's a nurse, and he was able to pull some strings and get MRIs and x-rays taken, which show implants. And Nancy in the second room did have an implant in her arm, which was put there and had it removed. I interviewed her about this. So this was a case that was almost designed to provide incontrovertible physical evidence of contact. I wonder about that. On the other hand, I'm partly on the fence with this. This could be a MILAB. This could be a military abduction,
Right. Okay.
which was staged by the military. I don't know. It doesn't. Neither scenario makes a whole lot of sense because this.
Why would they do that? Why would they stage an abduction?
To sort of promote the ET threat narrative.
Okay.
But
okay.
I'm not sure I buy that in this case because it wasn't a horrific event. Or, I mean, it was scary, certainly, for Mike, but the people who were taken on board were basically just physically examined and this sort of thing, which is essentially a health checkup.
Mm-hmm.
This involved more than just those 6 or 8 witnesses, because Yvonne Smith is really digging deeper into this. She wrote a book about this as well. And it's a very complicated event.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
to think I was there, it's just mind-blowing to me because, man, I was I was in a house on Ocean Beach, which is right next to the Village Inn, which is right next to the Hotel del Coronado, which is where the convention was. And there was all kinds of research. Bud Hopkins was there, Colin Andrews, Don Eckert, a lot of high-profile researchers, Yvonne Smith. So a very interesting event, which I think provides undeniable evidence that something happened. It's one of the better cases in terms of physical evidence, because often it does rely on solely what we would call anecdotal evidence.
Yeah. What do we do with like these implants? What do we make of these cases where there's implants? Like, there's quite a few, right? And the one that comes to mind immediately is Whitley Strieber. I spoke to him not that long ago, and he says his implant was like, it was made by his wife, I think, or she was in. No, that's not correct. But I think there was some involvement with like the afterlife, basically, and. He doesn't claim to know exactly what's abducting him. He doesn't say, it's just weird. What do we make of implants? What do we do with this aspect of the phenomenon?
Yeah, well, I've certainly looked into it because I would say a good 30, 40, 50% or more of the people I've interviewed at some point go to the dentist or the doctor, get x-rays done for other reason. And the doctor says, well, here's something in your ankle. That happened to a gentleman I interviewed, and he was told that he had had surgery, which he hadn't. This keeps coming up, whether it's in your hand or your leg, your jaw, your nasal cavity. I hear it all the time. I mean, one lady, she sent me the x-rays. I have them. They're in one of my books, of a foreign body, which was diagnosed by multiple medical professionals as not being natural. It's under his molar tooth. There's no doubt. So I'm just starting with that that I would say probably all, I can't say that with absolute conviction because I don't know, but I suspect that all contactees have implants. And very early on, I started to get information about them because there was a lot of speculation. People are like, well, this is for mind control and tracking. And that's not...
Tracking seems like the most logical, the most like, that's what you would think without really looking into it. Like, oh, it's probably to keep tabs or, you know, like, but you say it's not that.
I don't think so.
As far as you,
Because I learned long ago not to speculate. Let's just see what we know, know all that is knowable and proceed. And you cannot just say this is for tracking without proving it, in at least some indication of that. Because I will tell you, after Nancy, the lady in the Coronado Island, had her implant removed, she had another visitation. They re-implanted her. So, and contactees have asked flat out, are these for tracking? They said, no, we can find you wherever you are, which is 100% true, because we have contactees moving all over the place and have had their implants, they fall out of their nose or they pick it out of their arm or what have you. And often it'll disintegrate or disappear under mysterious circumstances. So it's really remarkable that Dr. Roger Lear has been able to actually put these under scientific study and found out that they are unusual in that some are magnetic, there's no foreign body reaction, some appear to be composed of metals most similar to meteoritic iron, which should not be in your body. I mean, there's a few of them that actually sent out electromagnetic signals. They can move around in the body. So they're like sometimes very difficult to retrieve. There's a lot of good evidence of these implants. But what are they for is the million-dollar question. Well, that lady I interviewed who had a cyst removed asked them, she is a fully conscious contactee. She woke up at one point. She wasn't having missing time. She knew what was happening to her and would converse with the ETs who were happy to talk. A lot of people, once they move past the fear, start having very interactive cases or experiences. And she's like, what are you doing? They said, we are putting an implant in you. She said, what is it for? And they said, this is to measure the level of pollution in your body. Your bodies are polluted. And another person, and I started reading this in other accounts and getting my own cases, was told it's to boost your immune system. Right. And another said it's to measure your vital signs so we know how you're doing. And it always came along those lines. Now, this is firsthand information. This is not speculation. Yes, it is. I mean, in a way, it is secondhand because it's not me being told by the ETs, but this is what the ETs are telling the witnesses firsthand. And I mean, there's a case in England, Jason Andrews, who talks about this. He's another fully conscious contactee. He's like, you are not touching my implant. I know what it's for. And he underlines this same reason. That's honestly what I think it's for, and there's good reason to believe this. One lady I did interview was vacuuming her floor, sneezed, and out came this little metallic spool. And she grabbed it, and she's like, this came out of my nose. What the heck is this? And she quickly threw it away. And then she realized what she had done and went to retrieve it and could not find it. But she immediately became quite ill. She had a blood sugar disorder, which the doctors could not diagnose, but she lost like 50 pounds and was fainting 3, 4, 5 times a day. And the doctors couldn't help her. They were giving her vitamins and doing everything. They could not diagnose it. It wasn't hypoglycemia. It wasn't diabetes, but it was along those lines. And finally, she had an experience and she was re-implanted and her health immediately improved. She's like, I have no idea why they did this. I'm just a housewife from Nebraska.
That's wild.
Wild. They absolutely. I think that's the purpose for implants.
So you think for her it might have been like actually helping her condition, and then in general it's to kind of to keep track of how you're doing physically and the pollution. I thought that was interesting. The pollution inside
in
your
most
body.
cases. I will say I interviewed a witness, Dolly Saffron, who's also a fully conscious contactee. I wrote one of my favorite books I've written called Symmetry about her case. And she's like, oh, yeah. I asked her, I'm like, tell me about the implants. She's like, well, yeah, they're health related. I have one here in my hand, which, she showed me proof. I love her case because she's got photographs. She's got corroborating witnesses. She's got medical evidence of healings of all kinds of stuff. And she says, yeah, well, this one is actually helps me to pilot the craft. They taught her how to pilot the craft, which sounds crazy. But before I even talked to her, I had several cases of this, not to the extent where she was able to describe it in such wonderful detail. I'm like, yes, this is, God, I love this, because she laid it out in black and white. But yeah, there can be different purposes, certainly, for these.
Yeah, because
they're good.
Sorry, go on.
These are good reasons. The deeper I dig into the UFO contact phenomena, I'm like, yes, I'm so happy that these guys are out there. They are looking out for us. And I know, my heart goes out to contactees who are having a hard time with this and who have negative experiences, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are people who are absolutely terrified, who wish this never happened to them, who have PTSD and insomnia and just don't like it. But even them, I ask them, what happened to you? And the worst I hear is people being physically examined with instruments that scare the living daylights out of them and are occasionally painful. But usually, if anyone feels pain, they'll immediately put their hand on your forehead and the pain goes away. Not always, but in the vast majority of cases. That's the worst I hear. I don't hear people being tortured or cut into pieces or, I'm going to scare you. No.
Have you ever looked into human mutilation? I haven't, and I want to finish on the implants first, but maybe we'll talk about that again in a minute. The human mutilation thing, because that's something that's kind of freaky, and like that lends itself to obviously bad stuff. But I have no idea what's even doing that, if that's even a thing. It's obviously just something I've heard of. But just to finish off on the implants, like the idea of monitoring the pollution is very interesting, particularly because of how drastically more polluted our bodies are becoming over the last few decades, and right now, we know how we eat so much plastic, and we have so much, just everything really. It's just we have very polluted bodies compared to what we would have had a long time ago. But also on the implants is with Whitley, because again, his case is wild, and he says that his implant allows words to come up on screen in his mind. So basically his late wife can communicate with him using that implant. So if he wants to know an answer to something, I hope I'm getting all this correct, but if he wants to know an answer to something, he can basically ask his wife, whatever, and the answer will come through written down in his mind, and he says it's because of that implant, and he says the implant helps him do research for his books and all of that kind of thing. So have you come across more cases where it's like that, where it seems to be if that's accurate, seems to be this insane tool that's
well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have had people describe this sort of things, but not directly relating it to an implant. So I will say a number of people have told me directly, Ramon, a guy I interviewed who was in the Marines, Wendy, that lady I talked about, that's not her real name. These are actually both pseudonyms, who had the cyst removed, said that her implant will start beeping. And that's how she knows the UFOs are coming around. And that's exactly what Ramon said. So I think there is an element of communication, certainly. And I've talked to people who have seen stuff in their mind's eye, words and numbers and downloads. So perhaps there is an element of truth to there. I don't have the direct information from the ETs, so this is what some contactees do believe. So that's why I didn't mention it right offhand. But I think that is also absolutely a definite possibility. I'm still waiting for a little bit more confirmation on that. But there's no doubt these implants are real and that they have multiple functions. And I think they're the smoking gun evidence, because people say, oh, where's the hard evidence? I'm like, there's a lot of hard evidence. There's land
And
cases, there's radar return cases, there's implant removal cases, there's angel hair. We haven't even gotten into that, but angel hair is a substance which UFOs sometimes, due to the interactions with the atmosphere, produce.
secrete.
And it's a hard physical evidence. There is evidence. And I love the implants because, explain that. I can show you an x-ray where it's a round metallic object in this 14-year-old teenager's mouth that does not belong there.
Yeah. And have we had, like, is there much analysis done on any of these implants? Like, has there been a case where we've gotten hold of these implants and it's actually been able to go through, extensive analysis via different people with different, expertise, different machinery, technology, what have you? And, like, yeah, so where are we at with that? What's the evidence in that sense? Like, have we had people coming out publicly and saying, look, like, we just don't know how this was made, we don't know what this is, like, or does it tend to be metals that we could find and could manufacture here on Earth?
Well, here's the thing, this is a very cutting edge avenue of research, and there hasn't been nearly the attention and money put to it that it deserves. Mm-hmm. It was spearheaded by Dr. Roger Leir, who had only worked on it for a good 5 or 10 years before he passed away suddenly in the emergency room of a heart attack. And that's where it ended. And they had these implants removed. As I said, they did show some very unusual properties. But let's face it, elements are the same throughout the universe. So iron does show up on other planets. All the elements we have are the same everywhere. So if someone says, well, this is just normal Earth iron, that doesn't preclude it from being extraterrestrial.
No.
But what we most often see is these implants where people try to retrieve will disappear. I talked to a guy who had one in an envelope in a box next to his bed, gone the next morning. And people have watched it. Dolly Saffron talked about this. As a young teenager, she dug one out and watched it dissolve in her hand. So I think that there are ETs are really reluctant to have some of this in public hands because we have such a tendency to abuse technology. But on the other hand, what we have found out shows some very unusual properties in terms of how this is put together. And I think the most impressive one was one from Dr. Roger Leir, who got a number of them. They looked identical, like a little cantaloupe seed. But there was a couple of them that had electromagnetic signals coming out. And there's some evidence that people have put EM detectors along their bodies and it goes off. So we know that they're real. As far as what they're composed of, we haven't gotten to the point where we can say this is definitively extraterrestrial, but it's certainly something we can't do. So I think it points towards that. So there's a lot of witnesses who've said they can relate it directly to an experience they had on board. They put something in me, it's right there. It shows up on x-rays, they remove it, and it's unusual. We can't put stuff in our bodies that doesn't have a foreign body reaction that is like this. And we've learned how to do implants of all kinds. But that would be different. ETs don't do
it's hard to wrap our heads around all this stuff, isn't it? It is wild. Like, it is wild when you kind of when you really think about this stuff. If this is really happening, this is crazy. Hopefully we're going to get a lot more analysis on the implants over the coming years, and hopefully that's going to be like an interesting area of development. As you've said a few times, you think that these ETs are benevolent. You think it's there's no ill intentions here. So we just mentioned that human mutilation and stuff. Just in a nutshell, what do you think is going on there? Do you think that is something related to the UFO phenomenon? And again, just to preface, I haven't really looked into that, so
Well, there was one really famous case which got a lot of attention, which took place on a military base, by the way. And that raised eyebrows for me because I'm like, could this be more along the lines of my lab? basically a faked ET event to make it look like ETs are enemies. And people would contact me like, you're kind of Pollyanna about this phenomena. It is negative. People are being hurt, and look at the human mutilations. So I did. And I looked into them, and there's about 10 or 20 so-called human mutilations. I don't believe any of them are directly ET related because I don't see really good reporting on it. It's the best proof we have of ET visitations, honestly, is the huge number of cases coming from all over the planet, from a very large number of witnesses, from very widespread locations who are reporting exactly the same thing, of being taken on board and seeing grays or praying mantis. They're describing the UFOs the same way. It's very consistent. And these are absolute outliers. I don't believe it for a second. It's contrary to what most people are experiencing. I think this is false flag. This is my assessment. I can't prove it, but I do know that my labs take place. I've talked to people who are victims of it, who are terrified of the military and welcome their ET encounters, where they'll have an ET encounter, and then the military comes and abducts them and puts the sodium pentothal in them and makes them say everything that happened to them, or just plain out, pretends to be ETs. And when someone reports a very negative experience, that raises a red flag for me. So yeah, I'm certainly aware of these cases. I've looked into them. I can't prove it one way or the other because I don't have my own personal case of a human mutilation. That's horrific. And even the cattle mutilations, I've looked into those because I did write a book, UFOs over New Mexico, which is the hardest hit state, and UFOs over Colorado, which is number 2 in the US in terms of cattle mutilations. And I surveyed the research of all the leading cattle mutilation researchers. Gabe Valdez being one of the most prominent. And he's like, government, this is government doing this. This is what Larry Fawcett said. This is what a number of researchers have said. Not all of them. Some who I think are paid disinformation agents are saying, oh, it's aliens. They're, abducting cattle and doing horrific genetic experiments. I don't know. I'm not a cattle mutilation researcher. I've kind of shied away from it because it's just not my cup of tea. But I do think it's happening, and I think our governments are going to have to answer to it because in a good number of these cases, we do see the black helicopters. And we have to remember, just because someone sees a UFO and it's coming down and pulling one of these cows on board doesn't mean it's ET. Because our government is doing a very well-funded, ruthless campaign to make this phenomena look evil. I don't think it's been successful because I think if you go on, I've seen surveys real quick on Facebook, like, do you think ETs are here to take over? 80% say no, my encounters have been benevolent. The Free study by Ray Hernandez interviewed thousands of witnesses and laid it out in black and white. 50% or more report being healed. 80% says this is absolutely benevolent. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And that kind of reflects my own research, because there's 10% less, actually. I'm going to say it's closer to 5% who just don't like it, or they're very fundamentally religious and just say, I think it's demons. I don't want to talk about it. This is what I think it is. I'll give you my story, and I will report it objectively. It's their story. It's not my job to interpret it. I just want the evidence, and I'll lay it out, and you can absolutely, I'll present your beliefs of what you think it is. But I think if you look at it objectively and put your own preconceptions aside, you'll see that this is not a malevolent phenomena. And the cattle mutilations is very controversial. And same with all the quote mutilations. But that's my assessment of what's going on.
Just to one last point on the kind of, the good aliens, bad aliens idea, like, so I think Ross Coulthard recently mentioned, like, I don't have the quote in front of me. I did note it down at the time because it really stood out to me that he was saying it. But he was saying that, I can't remember if he was asserting this or saying that somebody's told him this, but basically the long and short of it was that there are multiple types of ETs, or multiple types of non-human intelligence, whatever you want, visiting us here. So my question to you is, it's all well and good if maybe, you know, some of the ones that are most interactive with us are good, but are they all good? And again, it's not to say that there is a good and evil, because what are humans? You know, we're not particularly good, but I wouldn't say we're evil either. Like, we're kind of, you know, we have a bit of both.
Some of us
we're generally pretty mixed. So maybe they're all like that. Maybe every race is like, you know, kind of, yeah, they're mostly good, and some evil ones, or mostly evil with some. Maybe it's all a bit like that. But what's your take? Are there, say there is multiple ET species visiting this planet and interacting with us? Do you think they're all good, or have, you know, at least neutral intention, or is there anything coming here that maybe it does not have such good intentions?
Well, let me start with this. Yes, there's multiple types of ETs, because we do see grays, little short, probably AI grays, who don't seem to express a lot of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and are probably not alive as we would think of it. And then there's taller grays, mid-sized tall grays. We have tall whites. We have little blue beings. We have praying mantis. We have absolute human looking. We have strange humanoids of all kinds, but they're all humanoid. I think that's significant. And if you talk to the contactees who ask, you know, where are you from? Every time that someone gets a message on this, it's usually along the lines of, you know, we are you, you are us, we are one. We share a common heritage. We all come from the same place. We, you know, grays often said, well, we are human. We just look a little different because we've had, you know, different genetic damage, perhaps. That does come up. So my point is, we do seem to share a common heritage. Another very important point is, as a rule, ETs are telepathic. They communicate telepathically. They are in communication and cooperation with each other. So we see this in case after case with little grays and praying mantis and human looking working together. I see no evidence of a federalized government or money or religion or a galactic federation or anything like that. I think that's probably disinformation, because I certainly am not running across that in my research. So this is important because there are no ETs battling each other. There's no gray queen or king or, you know, deals with the government in exchange for, quote, abductions. I don't see any of that. There's a lot of confusion in this field. Now, when someone has an experience and a gray comes into their bedroom and says, don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. We'd like you to come with us. And they have a panic reaction. They immediately assume this is evil. And they feel like they did not ask for this, which consciously they didn't, even though part of them is in the back of their mind saying, wow, they're here again. Here are my friends. We compartmentalize our consciousness, is my point. So people are saying, go away, go away, go away. While another part of them, because they often come to this awareness later, it actually did agree to this and invited this and wants it. Almost everyone I've ever talked to says they want their experiences to continue, even if it is a mixed bag for them, even if they did initially have PTSD and nightmares and insomnia and a real hard time with it. So when someone's taken on board and they're being physically examined and they don't like it, this is when they have missing time. This is when they are rendered paralyzed. This is when they come to the conclusion, this is evil. I hate this. They hurt me. How could you say this is good for me? I came away from this traumatized. I have not heard anyone say that ETs physically hurt them purposefully out of enjoyment. Here on Earth, we have that all the time. When someone's kidnapped by another human, it rarely ends well. And what happens during the kidnapping is rarely any good whatsoever. We are sadists here. We are killing each other in large numbers. We are assaulting, we are lying, we're cheating, we're stealing. We don't see any of that. So I think we just need to step back. Are there evil ETs out there? I'm going to say yes. I think
Big
there are.
universe.
Because
Yeah.
there are, look at us. We are a horrific species. But I think the ones that are visiting us probably have moved far beyond that and have ethics and morals and laws they follow and have reached the point where they've overcome that kind of behavior. I'm pretty sure there are planets out there with people who are not evolved yet and probably haven't reached the level of interstellar travel. But I think once you've reached that level of technological ability, you've reached ethical and moral levels, which would preclude you from acting in ways that are so horrific and heinous. So I'm going to, here's an analogy, because I really want to drive this home, because I've talked to a number of people who are nurses and doctors who are contactees. And they've brought this up. Stephen Greer brought this up. And I'm like, yeah, this is a good analogy. Because when someone is in an emergency situation and they're being picked up by an ambulance, they're combative. They do not like it. No one likes going to the doctor. Rarely does someone say, let's go to the doctor. This is going to be fun. Stick me with a needle. I like this. No, they will spit on you. They will fight you. They will call you every name in the book. They will call you evil. And these are normal looking people who are nurturing, who are trying to help you in an earth setting. Now, if you overlay that with someone who looks quite different and is in a place that just you've never been before, and this is not even on earth, it's very easy to say, I hate this. This is awful. This is evil. And I've talked to people where I was like, this is evil. These guys tortured me. Like, okay, what happened to you? Well, they were standing by my bed and looking at me with these evil eyes. I just know they're evil. And that was it. That was all that happened to them. I'm like, okay, that's, I'm not going to try to lead someone down the garden path and say, this is good for you. What I will try to do is have them write down their experience. Say, look, how are you now? Did you have any health problems? When people are like, well, as a matter of fact, my rheumatoid arthritis disappeared. Or I had diabetes and it's gone. I had a detached retina. I had kidney stones. They're gone. I had a chronic back. That happened to a lady in Norway. She called me up and said, I have to tell you my story. These grays came. It was terrible. I hated it. They didn't answer any of my questions. They were flipping me around like a rag doll. I was terrified out of my mind. But when they left, my chronic back pain was gone. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Did you have any contact as a child? No. Did you have any contact afterwards? No. I'm like, because that's usually the pattern. I'm like, well, what do you do for a living? She says, well, please don't use my name. I'm retired, but I'm very active in my area doing human and animal rights. I'm like, there you go. This is who they contact. They're helping those who help others. So I'm sorry to give such a long answer to this, but people do feel like this is a negative experience. And when I talk to them or even read their accounts, the evidence shows that it's their fear mostly that is causing this. And
basically the same thing as when people have distressing NDEs. It seems to be that's probably...
we have a tendency to look through the lens of our own belief system.
Yeah.
And if it's out of our own worldview, it's very difficult for people. And
it's obviously scary, right? Like if you, as you said earlier, you take somebody out of their comfort zone, you drop them in a UFO, a craft with some beings they've never seen before in their life that look totally different to anything they've ever seen. Like most people are going to be like not in their right mind at that moment. They're going to be pretty afraid, and
that's the number one
it's easy
complaint.
to see how you can. Yeah,
they feel a loss of control. Like, why are you coming in my bedroom? People don't like that. But
but the healings.
There's my labs too. So I just need to underline that, because some people are being victimized by what they believe are ETs, and they're like, "How dare you say that this is a good phenomenon?" And I'm like, "Hold on a second, I am not. I think you are being my labbed," and people don't like to hear that. is just as skeptics. I've had people say, I saw a UFO. I'm like, well, no, you didn't. That was a plane. Because I can prove it. And they get hostile at times when I'm like, you didn't see a UFO. This was actually a satellite. Or because that happens. And people get very set. People really, I would encourage everyone who's having contact, especially if it's negative, to write it down, really meditate on it, look at what happened, see, are you okay? What actually happened to you? Because people will have a very strong emotional reaction, and it can split up marriages and cause all kinds of a psychic awakening, which they're not ready for, because suddenly they're having all, precognition of disasters. Some people don't like that. Precognition, I think, is a good thing, but if you start realizing, well, this person's going to die, and they do, you can interpret this the wrong way. So I just want to underline that it's all about how we perceive and how we react to it. And my labs are muddying the waters to a degree that makes it very difficult to convince people that ETs are not here to hurt you. They're really not. They've been around for millennia. One lady asked flat out, are you here to take over our planet? And the ET, the gray, actually kind of laughed and said, no, your planet is far too crowded. It's very polluted. You guys are very hard to be around. You are so emotional. You resonated a negative emotion. And it's very hard for us to be around you.
Yeah. I watched recently The Day the Earth Stood Still, and they were coming, wasn't it, not to take over the planet, but to help to save the planet, right? By taking out the humans. I thought that was a fun way of looking at things.
Which is the number one message people get. If I could just say this real quick, because when people do get messages, man, don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. They warn about nuclear proliferation, war, and our aggression,
environmental
disaster, greed and corruption, about environmental destruction, cutting of the forests, and pollution. Those 5 things. That's what ETs will tell you. Does that sound like they're trying to take over? I'm serious about this. Look at what is actually happening when people have contact. I beg people, just please look at what is happening to people who are having contact. They're psychically awakened up after contact, or during, or even before, because it's a two-way street. People will have the abilities of healing, mediumship, precognition, astral travel, past life recall, levitation, human levitation. Honest to God, that happens in a number of cases. Past life recall, psychic reading, channeling. These are great things. This is our big ET agenda. Wake up. You have all these amazing abilities. You are immortal. Connect to us. Communicate. This is their main message, honestly. Stop destroying your planet. Treat each other kindly. Wake up.
Next time, hopefully there's going to be a next time. If you're up for talking to me again, I want to talk in detail about what you're saying about this kind of psychic awakening, like people having these experiences after encounters with beings. That's something that's really interesting. I also wanted to unpack next time in much more detail, like the healing stuff. I'd love to hear more cases of that and how prevalent that is. I think for now, the last topic maybe that we can kind of get through today is Schoolyard UFO Encounters.
I was hoping you would say that. I love those cases. I adore them.
Yeah, me too. I find them fascinating. I don't know probably anywhere near as much as you about them. I'm really interested to learn more. First of all, how many recorded instances of this have you come across in your research?
Well over 100.
Really?
It's probably closer to 200 or 300, which is just the tip of the iceberg. I think it's probably within the many thousands.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is a lot for a school, it's a specific kind of encounter. So I got a question from Joe here. He's a big fan of your work. He's read, I think, a number of your books, and he was, I think, recommended I get you on. He was maybe the first person that kind of mentioned your name to me. So it's probably thanks to Joe that we're talking right now. Joe wanted to know which schoolyard encounter case or cases do you think particularly deserve to be better known? So yeah. Obviously, we all know about Ariel School. We all know about Westall in 66. there's other cases maybe that people start to know that, Broadhaven might be the third best known one just because of the name. There was another one, the name is escaping me now, but there was one, I don't know, California or something that was really interesting that I looked into recently. Anyway, what do you think? Yeah, which case or cases should be much more known, should be much more talked about?
Yeah, well, there's a good 10 of them, I think, that have gotten quite a bit of publicity. The Ariel, Westall, Crestview Elementary School in Opelika, Florida.
I think that's the one I might have been thinking of.
Broadhaven in Wales, Hillsdale College incident in 1966, which, by the way, was 2 weeks before Westall.
Same year as Westall, yeah. Okay.
Melbourne, Australia. So there's a number of really well-known cases. And that's what kind of got me to dig deeper, because I had a few of my own. And I adore these cases, because what I found out is that these are very low-level sightings. So we're talking a couple of 100 feet. And get this, 1/3 of these cases, of the 100 I collected, involve landings. They land right next to the playground. And
1/3, did you say, of the cases you collected?
1/3,
wow,
which is huge, because landings are relatively rare. These are daylight sightings. They're long-lasting. They're very widely viewed. I would say one that I wish was better known, and I don't have the exact date for it because I'd have to look it up, but it was in Maranui, New Zealand, at the Richmond Elementary School. Half occurred at elementary school, by the way, which I find fascinating. Because get them while they're young. They are coming to convince people of their reality. Kids are such open sponges of information.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what UFOs are. They have never even heard the term in most of these cases. It's fascinating. This case in Maranui, New Zealand, was amazing because it's one of the most widely viewed of these incidents, involving at least 400 students and teachers. Half these cases involve very well-educated adults, just so people know it's not just kids. And this enormous object came over the playground, and the teacher was just monitoring all the kids when suddenly it became deathly quiet. And you're looking around like, what is going on? Because normally kids are so loud. And every kid was looking straight up. And so he swivels his head and looks up, and there's an enormous disc right over. He says it was glistening. And there's an airport right nearby, by the way, which didn't appear to see it. Later, researchers did contact them, and they denied any knowledge of this, which is true for Westall. It's true for Crestview. It's true for a number of these cases. One in Florence, Arizona, had an airport right next to it. They didn't see it. So this disc hung there for about 10 minutes, and it was big enough where it covered the entire playground. So this was several hundred feet easily. Wow. Quite high up. I mean, not that high, actually, but certainly not like within 100 feet. It was at least 300-400 feet up, which is kind of the top of the altitude, because usually they'll come, they land, or they will come within a couple of 100 feet. Yeah. Often they'll put on displays, they'll release smaller objects, they'll flash lights, they'll dart around, do little shows. And this is essentially what it did. It came over, it hung there, 10 minutes, goes on its side, as they do. This is a good indication this is a valid extraterrestrial, because when they take off, they often will turn perpendicular and zoom off, which is precisely what it did. And yeah, a lot of witnesses to that one. It's very well verified. I believe it was early 70s. It may have been the 60s. I would have to look it up, but it's not super well known, and I'm surprised.
No. Do you know if any of the kids or teachers that were there have are in the public, are talking about it, are open about it and saying what they saw, or is it kind of like they're all quiet? What's the deal there?
I don't know that anyone is publicly speaking now, which the Broadhaven witnesses are, the Crestview witnesses, certainly the Westall witnesses, some of the Hillsdale College witnesses are still talking. This is I found cases from 1950 onwards up to the present day, 2, 3, 4 solid cases per year. It's just the tip of the iceberg, by the way. In the US, Canada, all across South America, all across Europe, England, of course, South Africa had an amazing case where a UFO pretty much landed on the tennis courts and tore them up. They will leave solid evidence. It's been photographed. One of my favorite cases, which isn't super well known, occurred at Whitsett Elementary School in North Carolina, which involved multiple objects which dropped loads of angel hair, which is a cotton candy spiderweb-like substance, which apparently is a result of the plasma-like field surrounding these craft interacting with pollutants in our atmosphere, and drops this sort of phosphorescent webby material, which usually dissolves very quickly. But there was loads of it in this case. And people were picking up. The teacher actually was a retired Air Force officer, a pilot, collected samples of it and had them sent to scientific labs, Burlington Labs, who was not able to identify it. Said, you might try a biologist, could be spider webs. We don't think so. So he did. And the biologist said, no, this is definitely not spider webs. I can tell you that definitively. But one kid actually reached down, picked it up, and before the teacher could stop him, ate it, put it in his mouth. Oh. Yeah. He spit it out quickly. He says it tasted bad. It was kind of salty.
Right.
So this is the one.
I was going to say, what happened to that kid?
He turned green. And no, yeah, don't eat it. It's probably not healthy because this has been studied in all over the world, in France and all around France, Australia. I mean, there's cases in every country of angel hair. It has like boron, magnesium, silicone, a couple of other elements that shouldn't be lying down there on ground. But I love that Whitsett Elementary case because it's undeniable. There are still witnesses talking today. So that's another excellent case of a schoolyard encounter, which I think are clear, honest to God displays where the ETs are just saying, hi, we're real.
Yeah. Yeah. You think that's basically the intention behind it, is your government's not really, is suppressing the knowledge of our existence, and so we're gonna show a few people and start to try and get people talking about us. You think that's the idea?
I do, though there are some cases. Well, certainly in the Rua, Zimbabwe case, Emily Trim, one of the witnesses, began having contact after that regularly up to this day. Right. So there is an element of that, like they are reaching out perhaps to some of these students in particular for an ongoing relationship. But yeah, I've interviewed some of these people firsthand, and basically one lady was given the message only, remember this, remember this.
Really? That's all they were told on that way. Yeah. So it's not like in all of these cases they're being told the same kind of stuff as Ariel School, where they're told, I don't know if they were all told the same message, but they kind of, a few of them at least got the message that we're destroying the planet, we need to stop what we're doing with technology, with everything, and look after it. That's not. Yeah, but not like, how often would you say that comes up in these schoolyard cases?
It's rare, but it does. Okay. There's a case in Colombia, which is not at all well known, but occurred like same year, I believe, as the Rua, Zimbabwe case, and was exactly the same in all of its elements, with kids running out, landed, ETs coming out, giving the message about the destruction of the environment, which, let's face it, back in 1994 wasn't a hot button topic like it is today. And certainly not something kids would be thinking about, especially in a rural area like Rua, Zimbabwe, or Colombia, where this, again, an elementary school was. That case is virtually unknown. It's only been one witness who stepped forward. So there's a lot more of this going on than people realize. Yeah. Love these cases. It's amazing, because if you look at the pattern of them, it's like, how would I describe it? Like an author does a book tour, or a musician does a concert tour, where they go basically spreading their message. It's exactly what these ETs are doing. They go from school to school to school, all over the globe. There was one case at Beverly High School where UFOs came down and did a whole display and then went directly to the nearby college. I forget the name of the college, but it was like 2 miles away, and put a display right over the quad, sweeping down real low. So this is not a coincidence, like, they're just flying over the school and it's just pure synchronicity. Nope. They're specifically targeting schools and circling around them. There was a case in California, which I love, which nobody knows about. And this UFO came right down and circled the school. There were portholes. You could see the little ETs inside. The kids were going crazy. The teachers come running out like, oh my God. They tried to cover it up. The teachers told the students, do not tell anyone. Well, of course, one of the kids went home and told his father, who went to the school, and became infuriated when he found out that the teachers asked the kids to lie. And he ended up interviewing a number of the students, tried to report it to the news, wasn't interested. The police, we don't handle this. Finally found the National UFO Reporting Center. So you can actually listen. I put this up on my YouTube channel. You can listen to his father give his report about what his child, who's like 7 years old and just precious, describing this saucer-shaped object, which landed in the ravine next to the school, then came up again an hour later and did another display. Wow. Absolutely unmistakable that this is an ET craft, because there's the portholes and you can see the ETs inside.
How can people find your interview with that guy if they want to watch it? What's it called, the video?
Yeah, I did put a book out about this, which is on Amazon, but a lot of people don't like to read books, so I have a YouTube channel, and I put a two-parter because a number of these are just sightings and a number are landings in humanoids. So yeah, it's called Schoolyard UFO Encounters, both the book and the video, and you can find it on my YouTube channel, which if you just punch my name in, it will take you there.
Well, I'll put the links in the description anyway. So in how many of these cases, in the Schoolyard cases, did the craft land, and in how many cases are beings getting out? And what I'm getting at is, are we getting the same descriptions across the board when it's the Schoolyard cases? Like, I'm thinking of aerial schools, so the small child, like wearing black skin tight suits. I think that's basically how they describe it, obviously with the big eyes and everything like that. So is that the same across the board? Is there much variety? How rare is the landing? Yeah, can you answer all 12 of those questions?
Yeah, certainly. Well, as I said, these are very low level sightings, and I think probably would be more landings, because there was one where it was coming in for a landing, but the kids came running towards it, so it went back up. Yeah, it's coming upon. These objects are very hot. There are cases of people who've run up to landed UFOs and regretted it because they suffered what amounts to radiation burns. But yeah, as near as I can tell, analyzing the cases I was able to collect, it's about 1/3 involving landings and or humanoids. I lumped those together because if you're seeing a humanoid, it's likely the craft maybe didn't land, but it's at a low enough level.
Okay. Yeah, now I recall that you did say 1/3 earlier, so that's my bad. I forgot that. So yeah, the beings, did they look? Yes. Yeah, please continue.
What we see certainly with the craft are fairly standard saucer shaped. Most of them, over 50% would be your typical flying saucer, and egg shaped, cigar shaped, and generally along those lines. Okay. And in terms of humanoids, I was surprised to find many different types. Grays certainly come up, human-looking ETs, very tall, sort of, strange humanoids. I don't know how else to describe it because they're unique. They often are described as having very large eyes. There was a couple with short, hairy humanoids. There was one with a tall, 8-foot greenish kind of looking creature looking in the window. All different types of humanoids, but generally speaking, humanoids. And some coming into the classroom.
Ooh.
Yeah. Kids
is that once that's happened, or
no? There's a couple, and there's a number of cases I didn't get to put in the book because once I put out the book, people are like, "Oh my God!" And I refused to talk about this because I didn't know this was a thing. But yeah, this happened to me.
Yeah.
Oh, and if I could
there could always be a second book. Can you talk a little bit about one of the cases where a being went inside the classroom?
There was one that was pointed to me by Albert Rosales. This was in South America, where the craft landed right next to the school. It was hovering right above the ground. So you could call it a landing if it's within 2 feet, right? because that's
If it's jumpable.
Yeah, if you can jump up it. And it came onto the playground, and kids were losing their minds. They're running around, and it walked right into the school, and it was in the corridors.
And is this a little gray being?
No, this was a strange little humanoid with big eyes. It wasn't a typical gray, but had a little jumpsuit. And after the book was published, I had someone tell me that they had a substitute teacher who was a little unusual looking and took the whole class out of the playground and had a UFO land. And another said that she went onto the this is another case, onto the playground, and this little boy walked up to her and started talking to her about weird philosophical subjects. And suddenly she realized it wasn't a little boy at all. And this happened repeatedly, and this happened to numerous kids. And kids would often go out into the little grove of trees and have missing time. They ended up having to call the ambulance and the police a number of times because this came back to her as an adult. She didn't fully remember it until later. But yeah, another said that she and a group of students was led out of her classroom into another room in the school where they were instructed by a gray. And a number of people in the school, and suddenly everyone freezes, and a gray is walking down the hallway, and then suddenly he's gone, and everyone starts back up, and no one remembers a darn thing except for the one student who remained conscious.
What's your take on that? What do you do with that? Like when there's this one being going inside the school, like why is he doing that? Why is he going rogue here instead of just sticking to the display out in the yard? What's happening there?
I can only
speculate.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your speculation?
I hate to do it, but all right, fine, because it's fun. I think they're probably coming for a student who they want to teach or heal or provide a message to, because contact does start at a very early age. And I've talked to a number of people. I mean, one just in my latest book, Humanoids and High Strangeness, one of the ladies, Nora, had this exact experience. I suspect they were coming for her because no one else remembered it except her. She was the only one. So, and there was missing time. So I think that does happen. And if I could, real quick, man, there's one case which was just so touching to me. The North Carolina School for the Deaf, where a UFO came right over the school. And these kids who are profoundly deaf came running out because they could, quote, hear it. It was resonating, it was thrumming at such a level that they could feel it in their bodies. And this thing, they come running out of the school. And the teachers, of course, who are hearing, most of them, saw this thing as well. It came so low, they thought it was going to hit the school. That's how low it was. But it raised up, went over it, and put, this is what they showed itself off to these deaf students, which to me was just so touching, because, and this case is virtually unknown, but fits in right with all of these cases. And I just thought it was such an amazing thing, because they don't show discrimination on who they contact.
Exactly. Yeah.
They show themselves to all people all across this planet. I love the Schoolyard Encounters. The kids are they make such great witnesses, because they don't overlay their own cultural interpretations. They're not saying this is an angel, this is a demon, this is an alien. They said, well, this was this thing. There was this person who looked a little funny. It's just amazing to hear these testimonies.
Yeah, no, it is. They are. I remember when I first heard about Aerial School, when I first kind of came across it. It's like, wow, what is this? How have I never heard of this? This, it is wild. And I had no idea there were so many. I had no idea there were so many accounts of this.
Yeah, I was in this field for years and years, and it knocked my socks off. I had no idea that this was a thing.
What's the most recent one you've come across? Have you heard of any recent Schoolyard Encounters?
Well, I put out the book a few years ago, and I found cases to about 2018 or 2019, I think was the most recent. It wasn't a great case in terms of, all the students seeing it, but someone was driving by an elementary school, and there it was right over the school during school hours. And the reason for that, I think, is because it does sometimes take a while for these cases to trickle down to a UFO researcher, because often people are reluctant to talk about it. And finally, they grow up and they're like, you know what? This is on my mind. a number of these people have become UFO researchers. Malcolm Robinson of Scotland had a playground encounter and ended up becoming one of Scotland's leading UFO researchers. And they become scientists or quantum physicists or lecture on this topic to the day they died. And not a single one has been caught at a hoax. Not a single one has retracted their testimony. This is something that will affect you for the rest of your life and has been universally positive. Not one has said, I didn't like it. Every single one of them said this was the most amazing thing ever. And some hold reunions. Certainly with Broadhaven, they have a reunion. I think it's every year. Recently, don't quote me on that, but they've had a number of reunions. They're still talking about it. But there's Rosie Ball Elementary School, also I think in Wales. They did a reunion with the teacher and all the students. It's amazing. It's just really very poignant.
Yeah. Sorry, just noting down the name of that latest school you said. So again, with the Ariel school case, one of the kind of well-known factors, or not factors, but it's talked about that there was a staff meeting when this UFO was hovering over. Is that something that happens have you seen in multiple cases as well, like that they try to kind of do it when there's more kids and less adults present, or do you think that was like just a coincidence that there was that staff meeting at the same time as the craft? Like, was that a planned thing? Like, are they like, oh, what time are all the staff busy today? What time should we go down and say hello? Oh yeah, let's do it at 11. Is that a planned thing? Or again, I know we're kind of speculating, but I guess the way of unspeculating is just, has that come up in any other cases?
I can't say that it has. So on one hand, I thought about that. I'm like, well, gosh, they're really on top of things. They know what's going on. So I suspect that they thought, well, here's an opportunity. But because in a number of these cases, adults don't see it. I find that very curious. But again, over 50% do have adults who see it. I mean, the case in Marysville High School in Ohio, where the adults weren't looking up and didn't see it until the kids are like, look, and grabbed teachers and pulled them out, including the principal. And they did see it. So I suspect in some cases, teachers don't see it, and that the ETs are just showing themselves to the kids intentionally. But there's enough cases where the teachers are seeing it. I find it also fascinating that half are elementary school, but there's junior high, high school, and college. There's a number of cases involving college. I love the Hillsdale College incident because 87 students, faculty, police officers saw it. It was there for 2 hours. It landed. A lot of people don't know this, but it landed next to Hillsdale College in the swamps there. This started the whole swamp gas controversy. That's where it comes from. And that's where J. Allen Hynek said, that's it. I am done with Project Blue Book. This happened. Because he got really criticized for saying it could be swamp gas. And he didn't really mean that. He was just saying, listen, there are various explanations. We're looking into, swamp gas and reflections. And the press seized on that and gave him the hardest time. He had a real hard time with that. And that's when Blue Book basically folded. It was a year after that.
Yeah. But that landed for 2 hours, you said? Or the whole thing lasted for 2 hours?
Yeah, it was there for 2 hours.
Yeah. Wow. That's insane. These cases are so fascinating. You said a minute ago about like a little girl spoke to a little boy and he was asking her some questions and then she was like, oh, he doesn't seem to be like a normal little boy. You made me think of something that Bob Bigelow said, where he said, and again, it kind of has parallels as well with the film I just mentioned I watched the other day, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Do they walk among us? Do you think they're walking among us? Are there non-humans and or extraterrestrials walking amongst us, basically indistinguishable from humans? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do. And I cringe a little bit because as the skeptic inside of me is like, oh gosh, people are skeptics. I'm going to think,
because it sounds wild, obviously.
But if you talk to the contactees, a number of them have seen human-looking ETs. And if there's some of them who have seen their ET contacts walking among the population. And if you look into accounts I found a bunch in Las Vegas casinos, 4 or 5 cases of apparent ETs who look real strange. Bud Hopkins had a case where a lady saw a gray ET on a subway. He had another case of a human-looking ET that, Debbie Jordan Cobble, who's a well-known contactee who's gone public, saw her ET contact on a RTD bus, a city bus. But yeah, people have seen them at gas stations. John Hunter Gray and his son believe that they saw a little humanoid at a gas station dressed up. Whitley Strieber, the editor of his book, Bruce Lee, not the martial artist guy, but an editor, believes he had an encounter with gray ETs at the bookstore where the communion book was being set up. It's a serious account. At schools, certainly, at stores, bus stations, train stations, restaurants, walking among the population. Yeah, I do think this does happen. I'm not hard to say how common it is, but let's face it, some of these guys look human, and we know if a gray wants to, it can project an image of a human being, perhaps, or even a screen memory of any kind. I suspect it's a lot more common, and that yes, they do walk among us. But it's kind of a tricky question because we ourselves are essentially extraterrestrials to every single other being beyond Earth. And yeah. I wonder about our own origins, because if there are ETs out there that look just like us, we're having a close relationship with them, and they're hybrid babies. This speaks again to what contactees are being told. We are us. I mean, you are us. We are you. We are one. Our relationship to them is much closer, I think, than we realize. We all share a common heritage. So I'm not so sure it's fair to call them aliens. I don't like that term. Extraterrestrials, fine, I'll go with that. But they're all people. And it's funny because I'll interview contactees who wake up and are having interactive, and they confuse me because they're like, well, the man came in. I'm like, well, when you say man, what do you mean? Yeah. They're like, well, the ET, I just call them people because that's what they are to me. They're my friends. People feel like they're their family. In fact, people are told this, that they are in fact part ET, hybrids. So that comes up quite a bit. So yeah, it's a tricky question when you say they walk among us, because a lot of contactees are themselves partly ET, as we ourselves probably are, because they've been visiting us for millennia and upholding our genetics. I don't think they created us by any means. I think we just go way, way, way back, much farther than current mainstream anthropology says. Because, I took anthropology in college, a lot of it. And they kept moving back. Every year, I would take the next class. They're like, well, we thought modern humans were 20,000. No, now we think it's 30,000. No, now we think they're 40,000 years old. And they're still currently, the controversy of human origins is not done.
Yeah. No, it's wild to think about all this stuff. One last comment is when I spoke to Whitley, he said something to the effect of, if you go far enough back in time, like, everything was the same, right? We were all one. We're like, depending on how this universe came about, I mean, it's all originated from something. So yeah.
Yeah, I love
this is kind of blowing my mind, a lot of this. But yeah, this is a fascinating conversation. I think I'm gonna have to let you go. I think we've covered enough today, and I think I've got plenty left on the table to talk to you again in future, because you've written so many books and done so much research that there's quite a bit to touch on. But yeah, I guess last thing for today is just, have you got a message or any kind of words that you wanted to say to people that have watched and listened?
Yeah, I would say that UFOs are real. Do your homework. Don't believe the lying government. If you want to know the truth about ET contact, look to the contactees. Leave fear behind. It clouds your judgment. So try to look at this objectively and prove it to yourself. The answers are within you. True knowledge comes from personal experience only. And if you want to have contact, you can reach out to them telepathically. This is the ET message. Wake up. Develop your psychic abilities, which is not hard to do. Just meditate. So that would be my message. UFOs are real. They're not here to hurt us. We're gonna be fine. Leave fear behind. Just allow love and truth to guide your actions. and be prepared for great changes. And if ETs should land in large numbers, if there's an existential crisis, a CME, a coronal mass ejection, which knocks down our grid, which is what the message is being given to many contactees. Be prepared for that. Collect food and water. Be ready for big changes in our future, because they're coming.
Thank you, Preston. I appreciate you, and I wish you all my best. All right, I look forward to doing it again.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you to Preston Dennett for talking with me. Thank you for listening to us. And thank you to our patrons for helping to make this possible. I hope you enjoyed it and gained some new insights. Please see the description for relevant links and more. And if you'd like to continue unraveling the universe with us, please subscribe. If you'd like to help us keep making content, please consider contributing via Patreon. Thank you.